Welcome back to the channel. This is Trady Storm and you are watching ninth part of What If Naruto Found a Hidden Lab in Waves. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Meeting room at the Uzumaki compound. As soon as Naruto walks into the clan meeting room, he sees all of the clan heads and their wives or, in the case of Tsunade, their wives and children. She was sitting with Hana at a table in the shape of a horseshoe. Sarah Saito was also in the room. These were people Naruto had always thought of as family. Naruto walks up to the table and sits down. He gives Tsunade a mean look and says, "Your daughter is a nuisance." Everyone in the room laughs at Hana, who pouts and asks, "What did I do?" Naruto looks at her and tells her, "I'm not talking about you, Hana-chan. I'm talking about your sister, who is a little she-devil." Tsunade looks at her with the typical Inuzuka grin and says, "Well, we didn't teach her how to pull pranks. That's all your fault." Everyone in the room laughs at Naruto, but their laughter stops quickly when Naruto says, "Keep laughing at me, and I promise I'll give her the book, even though it would be worse for all of you than for me." All of the adults in the room were sweating from the forehead down. Knowing what book he was talking about, it was the one where he wrote everything he knew about pulling pranks. He didn't know that there was a bounty on the book for all of the Chunin to Junin in the village, the same as an S-rank mission, for whoever could bring it back.
Many people have tried and failed to get it.
None of the ninjas could figure out why they were never able to find it. Just shaking his head, Naruto says, "Okay, let's get down to business. The first thing you should know is that I had my alleged godfather Jiraiya arrested, and he will stand trial in the next couple of days. I could have done it right away, but I wanted to give Hiruzen enough time to try to make a case for himself. I have no doubt that he will try to use you as witnesses to his good character to help him out." Shikaku looks at Naruto and says, "How did you catch him?" "He is one of the 3 Sannin in the Leaf Village, which gives him protection in the village and in the Land of Fire. Also, what are you planning to charge him with?" Naruto says with his trademark smile, "What people have forgotten about my family is that, in addition to being masters of ninjutsu, we were also masters of politics and very good at making contracts. So when my family came here, we made our entire compound and the district outside of it the embassy for the Land of Whirlpools, making it sovereign ground. This means that as soon as he came in here, he was under my control and lost all the protection he had." There was complete silence in the room until Naruto said, "Since you are not in the Land of Fire right now, let me be the first to welcome you to my home country." And then Naruto says, "And if you want to know what I'm accusing him of, the truth is that he did something wrong the moment he signed the papers to become my godfather. By the laws of the Land of Whirlpools, he was supposed to protect me, but he left the village and never got in touch with me. Since I was attacked while he was gone, I am charging him for everything." Sarah asks, "Is that why you went to the hospital yesterday and asked for a copy of your medical report?" Naruto nods and says, "Yes, I need it for the proof." Tsunade gave a growl and said, "If Hiruzen thinks for a second that I'll help that old pervert, he's in for a surprise. And not just because of what happened to you. I can't tell you how many times he's been caught peeking in the women's hot springs, but he's never done anything to stop him." This made the other clan leaders agree with what she said. Shikaku then asks, "Do you want us to say bad things about him for you?" Naruto says, "That's totally up to you. I know a few people, like Anko, who are going to. But I'll let you know soon when the trial will be so you can come see it." He then says, "Let's move on to the next thing for this meeting." He then pulls out a large scroll and opens it, letting out a bunch of envelopes and giving them to everyone. Naruto says, "Seeing as how I am going to be re-establishing my family, I am going to be doing something my family did not do which led to their destruction. It was due to the fact that they did not like to share their knowledge. I'm going to start my own business. The main product will be new Finjutsu seals that can be used for anything from protecting your home to giving shinobi and kunoichi new tools. I will also open several new restaurants and other businesses. I want you to look over all the paperwork and tell me what you think and what you think about it." As they all start to look through the papers in the envelopes, some of the clan leaders say something about one or two of the seals listed on the papers. Shiza picks up 3 small black pieces of plastic that each have a golden Uzumaki clan symbol on them. He looks at them and then asks Naruto, "What are these supposed to be?" When Naruto sees that everyone is staring at one of them, he says, "I'm glad you asked what you were holding. I made something for all of my friends, allies, and family, which you are. If you have one of those with you, you can get a 30% discount at all of my family's businesses. It has a special seal that can only be registered at one of my businesses. One for you, one for your wife, and one for your child. You would only have to show it at the cash register."
After going over the papers for another 30 minutes, several of them ordered seals for their families' homes.
Ones that are set up so that only people in their family can get in. Inoichi had just turned the page when he saw something that interested him. He looked at Naruto and asked, "Do you plan to open a bank?" Everyone else in the room notices this and quickly turns to that page to see it. Naruto gives a nod and says, "Since my compound can run like its own country, I will need my own bank for all my new businesses and for those who live in my compound and district and will have their own businesses. As the bank in Hidden Leaf has taken advantage of me too many times and does not offer a good interest rate of 3.5%. Plus, it's run by a council of civilians, and most of them hate shinobi. They think it's stupid that we should serve them for free and be happy about it, making everyone else in the room nod their heads to show that they agree." Inoichi once more looks at the paper and says, "You plan to give people an interest rate of 5.8% per year. Under the condition that they put at least 10,000 Rai in the account when they first open it." Naruto nods and says, "One of the women I was able to save this month used to run her family's business and keep all the books in her old village. She said she would be happy to do it again." Each of them decided to open an account after talking with their partners. The new bank is thinking it would be a good idea to put some money away where the vultures from the Leaf Village couldn't get to it. As soon as Naruto saw that everyone had finished looking at the papers, he said, "Now that we're done with that, there's one more thing I'd like to tell you all. As you all know, when I was born, Hiruzen decided to hide my heritage from everyone so that my parents' enemies wouldn't hurt me. I don't agree with this, but I can see why it makes sense. Even so, he should have told my parents' closest friends." Every person in the room nods their head to show that they agree. He then says, "As soon as the door closed, I put up a security seal so no one can hear what I'm about to say. I would give you the chance to leave now, but no one was getting up, so he said, if you learn this piece of information, you put yourself in danger." He says, "As you all know, I took in all the orphans from the orphanage, and I'm sure you've all met Aisha and gotten to know her in some way." As he gave Yoshino Nara, Inoiki Yamanaka, and Chana Akamichi a mad look, they all stuck out their tongues at him. Seeing that he had the attention of everyone, I'm bringing this up because I found out who her parents are. Like me, you should keep it a secret until you're sure it's safe to tell. Yes, she knows who her parents are. I'm not like Hiruzen and wouldn't keep that from her, but I've made sure she knows not to tell anyone. I'm telling you because I think it's better for her to have more protection if something happens while I'm on a mission and more people know about it." Shikaku says, "I think you are handling this better than Hiruzen did because you have a backup plan." Naruto. "Okay, so who are her parents? If you want to keep that a secret, it must be something important." When everyone closes their eyes, Naruto says, "You're right. I want you to picture her in your mind." Then he says, "Now I want you to give her about 20 years of age." All the women in the room, except for Hana, suddenly took a deep breath. Yoshino is the one who asks Naruto, "Are you telling me that she is Makoto Uchiha's daughter?" All of the men in the room turned to look at Naruto in shock when she looked sad and had tears in the corners of her eyes. Naruto shakes his head no and says, "She is not Makoto's daughter. She is her granddaughter. Her father is Itachi and his secret girlfriend." He then pulled out copies of the letter and said, "This was found in a locket that she was left with." When everyone reads it, they are all shocked into silence. It was Inoichi who said, so, technically, he was just doing what he was told to do. Sume slammed her hand down on the table and let out a growl. I always knew that jerk Fugaku was nothing but trouble. Kushina and I told Makoto this, but she insisted that she loves him and could change him. When he showed interest in her back in the academy, I should have neutered him. Chanda looks at Naruto and asks, how did Aisha react when she found out who her parents were? Naruto looks down and says, I won't lie to you, there were tears. The first thing she asked me was if it meant she was going to be bad when she grew up because of what her family was going to do and what her dad did. When the women in the room heard this, they all wanted to run out and find her and give her a hug. While the men looked at the faces and saw sadness there. No child should have to think that, Shiza says. Then Sarah says, I think I delivered her, because I remember seeing Itachi there, and they told me that they were just friends. And I remember that her mother died a few days after giving birth because there were problems. I tried everything I could to help her, but it was too late. Naruto says, also, when she found out, she was so upset that she was able to turn on her one Tomo Sharingan. I hope that bringing her up in a loving environment where she is not told that she is automatically better than everyone else, that you always have to be the best at everything, and that failing is not an option will help her become a better person and not be a typical arrogant Uchiha. Hana finally speaks up and says, I see you're going to take the nature versus nurture approach. Naruto nods his head and says, yes, I think it's already working. She says she doesn't plan to use her Sharingan because of what her father said in the letter. She wants to use it as her ace in the hole. And then Naruto says, as for all the money he left her, it's more than enough for her to not have to work because they did so many important missions together. I'm going to save it in a special account for her that she can use when she's older. I will raise her for the time being with my own money. At this, every parent nods his or her head to show that they agree. She can wear her mother's jewelry to special events and parties, but she can't wear it every day because some of it looks very expensive and I don't want her to lose any of it. Naruto pays attention to what Inoiki says when he says, that is, in fact, a very good idea. I couldn't wear any of my mother's or grandmother's jewelry until I was about 13 years old, and I had to prove I was responsible enough to do so without being watched. Courtyard. After going over a few more interesting things for another 30 minutes. The group decides to split up and go home for the afternoon. As the group walks into the courtyard, Naruto talks to Hana about sending some of the kids to the vet so they can adopt some of the pets. She smiled and said, that's fine, we already have too much, so it would be a big help. Naruto says, but I'd like you to set up a class where the kids can learn how to clean, groom, feed, and water pets before they can adopt them. She gave him a kiss on the cheek and said, if you keep it up, I might just talk my mom into writing up a marriage contract for us. At least I would know that you would be a good partner and take care of me. This made his face turn bright red. As soon as they turn a corner and see the group, they see something funny that makes all the adults laugh. Naruto walks around the group to find out why everyone is laughing. His right eye starts to twitch when he sees a little girl dressed just like Ino dragging a boy tied to a rope behind her. When she sees the big group, the little girl waves at him and says, hi, big brother. Naruto then he says, what do you think you're doing, and who is that? With a big, innocent smile on her face, she says, Aunt Ino said that when you find a boy you like, you should hook him quickly so he can't get away and no other girls can get him. Yoshino and Inoiki walk up to her and say, well, first of all, you tied the ropes wrong, so he can easily get away. Then, they show her how to tie the knots correctly. Naruto throws up both hands and says, I'm done. He quickly walks away while grumbling to himself about how evil women are and listening to all the women laugh. When Inoichi saw that he was out of sight, he looked at the heads of his two other clansmen and said, since the girls are being corrupted by the women, do you want to go find some boys we can corrupt? I think it's just, all three of them had smiles on their faces. Sakura POV. Sakura had been doing well for a few days. She had paid attention to what Naruto told her and started eating more than she ever had before. She had already gained some weight. She also had two big surprises. The first was when the Hokage called her into his office and told her he had heard about what happened during the invasion and that, because she had changed her attitude, he was willing to take her off probation as long as she kept getting better. And the second one was that she decided to train with her new weapon when she woke up this morning. She did her normal morning routine and was shocked to find that her bra was too tight, so she got a new one before she started training. She spent the next couple of hours in a store buying new clothes that said, "I am a kunoichi." Even though she was still in a cup, she was happy that she was getting better. So, she went shopping and had a big lunch to celebrate what she found out this morning. She was now on her way to training ground 29, which was more rocky and had big stone walls that would make great targets for her new weapon. She was walking through the restaurant district with Muteki Tekken on her shoulder. She thought, I should try to find a way to strap this to my back. She also thought, maybe Naruto-kun can help me. The next time I see him, I'll ask him. She stops all of a sudden when she realizes she has added the kun to Naruto's name. When she heard her name, she slowly turned around so she wouldn't hit anyone with her weapon. When she did, she saw Kakashi calling to her. Sakura puts on a smile and says, "Good afternoon, Kakashi-sensei." She expects her teacher to greet her with a warm welcome. When he started to yell at her, she was surprised. "We need to talk about what you did to Sasuke, Haruno. So after all I've taught you, you're still going to attack him? I shouldn't have let you become a kunoichi at all. The only reason I did was because I need a full team. And I thought you might be able to help him because you know how to use chakras and your teachers at the academy think you can." As Kakashi looks at the biggest weapon she was holding and says, "Where did you get that gun? I don't think I told you it was okay to get a gun." Sakura frowns when her sensei yells at her. "With all due respect, Sensei, I only did that to Sasuke because he was going to attack an innocent civilian who couldn't defend herself," she says. Sakura was surprised that she had called Sasuke by his name without an honorific for the first time in years. Then he says, "To be honest, Kakashi-sensei, you haven't taught me much besides how to walk on trees and a few team building exercises." Kakashi closes one eye and says, "That doesn't change the fact that you attacked a fellow comrade. I'll take you to the Hokage to make sure you get the right punishment and have your headband taken away." Says then, "You and that worthless Uzumaki brat should never have made it through the academy. You're both useless, but at least you have some brains in that big head of yours. The Uzumaki kid only got his diploma because of a small mistake." Sakura narrows her eyes and says, "Don't talk about Naruto-kun that way. If it weren't for him, my mother, grandmother, and I would have died during the invasion. Even though I've hit him and insulted him, he still saved us, even though I've done all those things to him. He then made me look in a mirror and showed me that I was just a regular person pretending to be a kunoichi. He told me it was time to start taking my job seriously, and I saw that he was right. I went home, bought a new outfit that a real kunoichi would wear, and started helping with the invasion. That's when I saw Sasuke use that evil chakra, the same one that happened in the Forest of Death. So, when he turned his blade on the innocent civilian, I knew I had to help. Since you never taught me anything, I had to use the only thing I know how to do, which is a right hook. Do I feel bad that I had to hit him? No, I don't feel bad for him because he got what he deserved. As for this weapon, I was being watched by one of Naruto's shadow clones. When he saw that I had finally stopped being a fangirl, he gave me a chance to prove I could be a kunoichi. He gave me this weapon so I could protect my friends and family." When Kakashi heard this, he put out his hand and said, "As your sensei, I want you to give that to me right now. Then we'll go see the Hokage." While he's thinking to himself, "I couldn't get the other ones, but I'll give this one to Sasuke." Sakura shakes her head no and says, "I'm not giving this weapon to anyone, and I've already told the Hokage what happened, and he said I won't be punished for it." Before anything else can happen, a female AMBU with purple hair and a cat mask appears next to them. Kakashi looks at her says, "Hello Neko, what do you want to do here?" Neko says in a harsh voice, Junin Hitaki, you're supposed to go see the Lord Hokage. If you don't, I'm supposed to drag you there by force. At that moment, a dozen more AMBU show up. Kakashi gives Sakura a dirty look and says, we'll talk about this later. He then vanishes in a swirl of leaves. A large man in a pitbull mask looks at Sakura and says, please excuse me, Miss Haruno. May I look at that weapon? I sometimes use a large club myself. Sakura tightens her grip on the handle and looks worried, as if she thinks he is going to take it away from her. Neko says, don't worry, he won't take it from you, and if it helps, Naruto and I are friends. That's when Sakura remembered Naruto talking to this particular AMBU a while back and how she had called him a baka for making more trouble. She decides that if Naruto can trust them, so can she. She gives him the club to look at. The mask of a pitbull AMBU started to look at it by measuring its length and weight and giving it a few swings. Then he said, it looks good. Then he gave it back and asked, did I hear you right when you said Hitaki gave it to you? Sakura nods her head yes and says, I was just going to the training ground 29 to practice. Both of them laugh at that, with Pitbull saying, if you're interested, I'm happy to give you some tips. Even though I can see why you want to use the training ground 29, your enemy won't always stand still for you to hit them because of all the big stones around it. Sakura's face lights up when she thinks about getting training from an AMBU, and she quickly says yes. Then he says, good, see you there soon. I just have one thing to do. Both AMBU watch as she runs away, and then they both leave in a cloud of leaves. The Tower of the Hokage. Hiruzen Sarutobi was not having a good day. He and his student had gone to the Uzumaki compound with the hope of meeting for the first time and getting along well. Only to find out that Naruto already knew who he was. Then they found out that they had walked right into his trap because he had once again underestimated Naruto. And Naruto used his new position to get Jiraiya arrested. He knew he couldn't stop it because it happened on foreign land, and he would now have to try to build him a case. He also knew that he wouldn't get many of his ninjas to testify in Jiraiya's defense, especially among the females in Kunoichi. He also knew that people close to Naruto would immediately support him and bring their own proof. Now that Naruto's family history is out in the open and when people find out that Jiraiya was supposed to protect him but didn't, it will be even harder. He then started rubbing his eyes because he had a headache. He thought to himself, all I can do is hope that Naruto can convince Tsunade to come back to the village and hopefully become Hokage. A town with gambling in the north of Land of Fire. A blonde woman with pigtails and a green yukata with the word, gamble, written on the back was sitting in a gambling hall. She had just pulled the lever on a slot machine and was watching it slowly stop on the number 777, which meant she had just won a huge jackpot. A woman next to her who was holding a pig started jumping up and down and shouting, we won, Lady Tsunade. Now we can pay off some of our debts. Tsunade quickly stood up and told Shizune, we need to quickly get our money and get out of town. I have a very bad feeling that something is coming toward us. The two women quickly grab all of the tokens and run straight for the cash outline, hoping to beat whatever is coming after them. The Tower of the Hokage. Kakashi walks into the office without even knocking on the door. He puts one hand in his pocket and pulls out his famous book with the other. In his lazy voice, he says, Lord Hokage, you called for me? I was giving one of my students a punishment when you sent Neko to get me. Hiruzen looks up and sees someone in his office. When he sees who it is, he gets angry right away. Hiruzen walks around his desk and grabs the book out of his hand. He then rips it in half and throws the pieces into the air. He then uses a low-level fire technique to burn them to ashes. Kakashi was too busy watching the pieces burn to notice when a fist hit him in the stomach and knocked him to his knees. Hiruzen looks at Kakashi from below and says, tell me something, Junin Hitaki. What do you not understand about the report I have in front of me? I've sent you several notices over the past month, but you've chosen to ignore every single one. He was trying to get a breath. Kakashi says, "I'm sorry, Lord Hokage, that I didn't follow your orders this month. The civilian council told me to get Sasuke Uchiha ready for the final exam, so I had to train him for the whole month. Then, when we get there, I find out that you disqualified him. You have no idea how much harm you have caused. I've been working hard for the last few months to make sure he stays loyal to the village. If he finds out what you decide at the meeting, he might leave the village for good." Then Hiruzen says, "And how do you feel about how you treat Naruto? I trusted you to protect him and treat him fairly, but I just found out that you haven't taught him or Sakura anything, and the way you treated him at the beginning of this month.
I don't know what you were thinking at the time that you thought you could get away with this, but as of right now, he is no longer your student.
In fact, you have no more students. I've decided to end Squad 7 for good. There will never be another Squad 7. I should have gotten rid of it after your team fell apart. The last 4 teams with that number have also been terrible, and because of how you treated both of them, I'm going to take all of the mission pay out of your account and give it to both of them. You didn't teach them anything and just wasted their time. I am officially lowering your rank, and because you were stupid, your new rank will be that of a genin. Because it's clear you're not ready for power, you won't be able to move up for the next 3 years, and now that you're a genin, you'll have to learn responsibility from a Junin sensei. Since a genin died in the exam, there's an open spot on one of the teams." Hiruzen couldn't hide his excitement when he saw Kakashi's horrified expression. Then Kakashi says, "The council will never let that happen. Only I can train him." Hiruzen says, "You're forgetting that I'm the Hokage. For too long, I've just let them run this village. Naruto opened my eyes, and now it's time for me to start taking this job seriously again. If that means I have to get rid of the council, I will. As for the Uchiha, if he doesn't pass the mind walking test, I will have him kicked out of the ninja program completely. His clan." He says then, "Now give back your vest, because you're no longer allowed to wear one. You are now told to go to Training Ground 9 to meet your new team and give this scroll to Might Guy. This will let him know that you have joined his team. If I hear that you didn't follow an order, I'll put you in blood prison for treason and you won't be able to talk to any of your former students. If you don't leave, I'll send you back to the academy and start from the beginning." Hiruzen stops Kakashi as he walks toward the door and tells him, "Minato, Obito, and Rin would be upset with how you treated Naruto." Uzumaki compound in the middle of the night. Hinata had come around the corner of the hall to see Aisha in her pajamas. She tried to open Naruto's door, but it wouldn't budge. "What's going on, Aisha? Why are you out of bed?" she asks as she walks up to her. As she looks up, she says, "I always sleep in Big Brother's room because he keeps me from having nightmares, but the door won't open." Hinata is a former heiress, so she knows that the door wouldn't open unless it was locked, which means Naruto didn't want to be bothered tonight. As she thought about what this probably meant, she made a sad face. Hinata takes her hand and says, "Well, you can come stay with me tonight. I'll even tell you some funny stories about your big brother that he probably doesn't want you to know." Aisha started to jump around and ask, "Like what, big sister?" Hinata says with a small smile, "Remember when he lost a bet with Aunt Ino and had to go to the academy wearing a dress for a whole week?" This makes Aisha laugh and say, "I wish I had been there to see that." Then Hinata says, "Well, it's a good thing I got a few photos I can show you." Uzumaki compound. As soon as the sun's rays came in through the window and woke Naruto up, he realized that Yoruichi wasn't in the bed with him. He got out of bed and looked around the room. He saw a piece of paper on the nightstand and picked it up to read it. Note to self. To fish cake. Had to go back to the land of waves for a meeting with some of the women, and I had to spread the word about what an animal you can be in bed. I'll be back when I can try not to wear you out, because I wanted to try more of that stamina in the future. Yoruichi, I love you. Notes end. He could only shake his head because there was a small drawing of a cat blowing him a kiss at the bottom of it. Then he thinks, that woman looks so much like Anko that it's not even funny. because she always put a picture of a snake blowing a kiss at the bottom of the notes she sent to him. It always confused him, since snakes don't have lips, but he decided it was part of her personality. When he realized he had to get up and get ready for the meeting, he ran to the bathroom to clean up quickly. Dining hall. After getting through the hallways and laughing at some of the kids who got tricked or dodging running kids, soon, he walks into the dining room and sees that all the kids are yelling and making a lot of noise, which has become the norm for the morning in the house. He also sees some of the servants bring plates of food in and out of the kitchen. They also tell the kids not to throw their food or not to use good table manners. He sits down at the head of the table, then looks to his right. To see Hinata sitting at the table in a white tank top and pajama pants. She was sitting in front of a big plate of cinnamon rolls. He says, "Good morning, Hinata-chan. I don't think I can get one of those, do I?" She quickly put her hands on the plate and hissed at him. When she realized what she had done, her face turned bright red. This did nothing but make Naruto and the other kids laugh. After quickly making himself a plate of breakfast, he says, "I'll be gone most of the day because I have a meeting with the village council. I want everyone to be good while I'm gone, or at least as good as an Uzumaki can be," and he smiles like a fox. Making each child smile, and some of them laugh and try to look innocent. One of the servants, who was putting a plate of eggs on the table, says, "I'll make sure we have fire extinguishers on hand." Some of the kids started blowing raspberries at them.
Naruto quickly turned back to Hinata when she screamed in surprise when one of the boys got too excited and knocked over a pitcher of water all over her front.
The boy quickly said he was sorry, "I'm sorry, big sister," and her replying, "It's okay. Just chill out." When she looks back at Naruto, she can see that his whole face is red and that blood is dripping from his nose. She thinks for a moment about why his face looks like that, but then she quickly looks down and sees that the water had made her white tank top see-through. This let him see her bare chest because she hadn't put on her bra yet this morning because she was still in her pajamas, and she didn't wear one to bed because they were uncomfortable. She screams and puts her left arm over her chest. Then, on instinct, she uses her right hand to hit Naruto in the face. When she realized what she had done, she quickly got down on her knees and kept saying she was sorry while keeping her chest covered. Naruto gets up and says, "No, it's my fault. I shouldn't have been staring." Then, he takes off his jacket and gives it to her. She puts it on quickly and closes the front. She says, "I have a meeting with my team, so I'm going to go get dressed." I quickly left the room, my cheeks red. I knew she was big, but I didn't know she was that big, Naruto is thinking to himself. Then he looks at the kids at the table and says, "No one is to tell anyone outside of this compound what happened this morning, and I better not hear anyone making fun of her about it. Do I make myself clear?" Making sure Hanabi was looking at him, he said, "That goes double for you. I know you like to tease her, but you won't tease her about this." All of their kids and servants have to say, "Yes, big brother, Naruto-sama." After Naruto ate his breakfast, he walked to the main gate by going through the compound. Then he sees Hinata coming toward him in her regular clothes and carrying his jacket. He smiles and says, "Well, since we're both leaving, do you want to walk with me?" She feels embarrassed and her cheeks turn red as she hands him his jacket and nods her head. Random street. Naruto and Hinata had been walking down the street for a few minutes while Naruto tried to talk to Hinata. Hinata won't look at Naruto. Instead, she's looking at the ground and retreating into her shell. Thinking quickly, he disappears and reappears behind her as he starts to tickle her sides, making her squeal and beg him to stop. "If I stop, will you come out of your shell again?" asks Naruto. Hinata quickly nods her head and says, "Yes, stop. Please stop." Hinata gives him a cute pout and asks, "Who told you that my sides were ticklish?" Naruto just looks at her and says, "I talked to one of my sources, and she might have told me something about you or she might not have." Hinata narrowed her eyes and said to Hanabi, "I'm going to wring your little neck," with a small, evil grin on her face. When Naruto sees this, he says, "Good, don't go back into your shell anymore. I like Hinata because she is brave. And I never said Hanabi told me about your ticklish spot. I also told them all not to bother or tease you about what happened this morning, so please stop worrying about it. We can't change what happened this morning, but we can try to make sure it doesn't happen again." Naruto then sees Kurenai, who had just come out of a swirl of leaves and was now standing next to them. Naruto says, "Well, it looks like you're in good hands, so I'm going to my meeting. Be safe and don't push yourself too hard," and then he runs off. Hinata sees that Kurenai is staring down at her with the look she calls her mom look. "What happened this morning? Are you going to tell me?" Hinata quickly tells her what happened at breakfast, which makes her face turn red again. Kurenai looks down at the girl she thinks of as her daughter and says, "So, let me get this straight, in the last month, you first showed him your backside, then you moved in with him, and now I hear that you showed him your girls? Do you and I need to go to the drugstore? Because, young lady, I'll tell you right now, I'm too young to be called grandma." Hinata passed out as a result. Kurenai picks her up, and she thinks to herself, "I think the next couple of years are going to be really exciting, but I'm going to have to make time to talk to Naruto and make sure he doesn't do anything." But she knows she's fooling herself, because Naruto would never do something like that, so she heads to the training ground. Away from the meeting room, Naruto walks in quickly and sees the clan heads he knows talking in the corner. Shikaku says, "Well, it's good to see you didn't pick up your sensei's bad habit of forgetting when the meeting started and showing up late." Naruto says, "You're not the type to talk about forgetting things. Who is it that keeps forgetting his anniversary every year?" Shikaku looks at him with a sad face and says, "My annoying wife keeps bugging me about forgetting it." Then Naruto says, "You do know that today is your anniversary, right?" Shikaku gets wide-eyed and says, "SH*T, this time she's going to kill me." This makes everyone in their group laugh at him and remember what happened last year when he forgot he had to sleep on the couch for the whole month. Then Naruto puts his hand in his pocket and pulls out a piece of paper. Then she says, "You're lucky I remembered that you have a reservation at this restaurant tonight at 8 o'clock, and Inoichi's flower shop has an order for her favorite flowers." Sume and Asuma laugh out loud at the sad guy who has his head down. Sume says, "And you guys wonder why your wives like him more than you do? It's because he has never forgotten anyone's birthday or anniversary." This makes the other two feel bad because they now know she was right. Before anything else can happen, the doors to the main room open and everyone starts to come in. Meeting room. As soon as the group walks into the room, they see Hiruzen and the elders. But, to my surprise, there's also another group of people there. Dami of the Land of Fire was sitting on a step above them with his wife on his left and a woman with a small child on her lap on his right. A few dozen samurai are also spread out around the room. Once everyone is seated at the table, Hiruzen clears his throat and says, "Welcome everyone to the meeting today. Before we talk about the schedule, does anyone have something to say or bring to the table?" Hiruzen and everyone else in the room watch as Naruto stands up and says, "I have something to say. I want to know why you are breaking the law and committing treason right now, Hiruzen." What he said makes everyone in the room gasp in shock. When he saw the boy, he thought of him as his grandson. He says, "What are you talking about, Lord Uzumaki?" Naruto took a scroll out of his bag and said, "What I mean is, why is Hiashi Hyuga sitting at this table right now? I really think that he was at the last meeting because he is a ninja. If you're wondering why I'm bringing this up, it's because when this village was built, it was decided that the Shinobi Council would only be made up of the original 10 clans, and no other clan would be allowed to sit on this council. And according to the history books, the Hyuga didn't come to this village until 2 years after it was founded. This means they aren't one of the 10 original clans and don't belong on this council. If you let them sit on the council, you are breaking the law." Then he takes a book out of the scroll and says, "I have a copy of the charter in my hand that proves this is true. Not only the 10 clan heads at the time, but also the Dami have signed it. I had my clones go back through the books for a while and found out that it happened in the middle of the Second War, not long after the Land of Whirlpools was destroyed and the last member of the Senju clan was killed. Tsunade Senju refused to take her seat for personal reasons, and her younger brother was too young to take it. And my mother was too young to be the Uzumaki clan's leader. At this time, Hiashi's father saw 2 openings on the council. I found in the paperwork that he talked to you and offered his knowledge of battle tactics because the Iwagakure army was trying to travel through the Land of Caves, where his family lived, to get information and a temporary voice on the council while the war was going on. And since he is sitting in this room, you never revoked that order, which makes you a part of the crime, since the Second War is probably over. Everyone in the room looked at Naruto with wide eyes. When the room went quiet, the Fire Daime spoke up and said, "Well, those are some serious accusations, Lord Uzumaki. I'd like to see your proof, please." He gave the paperwork to a samurai and showed him a few pages in a book. When the samurai nodded his head, he quickly took the paperwork to the daime. Hiruzen has both elbows on the table and is massaging his forehead with his hands while holding his face in his hands. He is wondering if this day could get any worse. The civilian council yelled at Naruto because the Hyuga clan was their voice on the ninja side of the council. This broke the silence in the room. Naruto looks as the head of the civilian council, a man he knows, stands up and says, "When did you first start doing what the law says? I don't know how many times you broke it when you were in the academy." Naruto started to laugh, which made everyone look at him because his laugh said, "I just played a trick on you." Naruto says with a fox-like grin, "When this village was founded, a law was made that said any active shinobi or kunoichi academy student who can find a hole in the security of the village can use it as long as it doesn't hurt anyone. This means that all of the pranks I played as a child were not technically illegal. In fact, I was following the law. So, the people in charge will be able to fix this security hole. Here's an example of what I mean. Do you remember when I put bubble bath in the hot springs and made it all bubbly? This was a harmless joke, but if I were a ninja from the hidden grass, I could have easily put poison in the hot spring because there was no security there." As he keeps going through all of his pranks over the years, he shows how each one was a security flaw. Remember when I wrote graffiti on the monument? Instead of paint, I could have put explosive tags on it because security was again not good enough. Then there's what happened the night I graduated. I was able to sneak into one of the most secure buildings in the village, getting past 3 patrols of the best shinobi and half a dozen AMBU, and steal one of the most powerful scrolls in the village without being caught until Hiruzen walked into the room at the end. Naruto turns and looks at them and says, "Didn't any of you ever wonder why I was never punished besides having to clean up the messes every now and then?" Because he knew I wasn't doing anything wrong, pointing at Hiruzen. Tsume had both arms on the table and her head on top of them. She was laughing so hard that she fell over to the side. Shiza was holding his stomach while laughing hard, and Inoichi was laughing to himself while holding his face with his left hand. Shikaku is talking to himself about how he has to take his wife shopping because she always said that his pranks were about more than just making people laugh, but he says that he was just being annoying. Asuma gave Hiruzen a lot of money in rolls, and Hiruzen smiled for the first time in a few days. Naruto looked at this and smiled to himself as he saw everyone he thought of his family doing this. Then Naruto raises his hand and says, "So, I made sure to write everything down in my book so that if I ever had to do it again, I would know what to do. But I always made sure no one could ever find it because I didn't want anyone to copy me." Tsume, who had gotten herself under control, asked Naruto-kun a question that everyone wanted to know. "Where did you hide it?" "A lot of us have been looking for that book." Naruto shrugged his shoulders and said, "Well, since it's no longer in the original place, I guess I can tell you I put the book in the one place no one would be brave enough to look for it in this village. It was in Anko's top dresser drawer, under her underwear, because she doesn't wear underwear unless she has to, which isn't very often, and she doesn't open it very often, either." Everyone in the room who knew the snake mistress laughed out loud because they knew she was one of the most determined people to find the book. Now they can tell her that it was right in front of her eyes the whole time. Naruto can hear a little girl say, "This Anko woman doesn't wear underwear, does she?" When he looks up, he sees the little girl sitting on the woman's lap next to the fire dame. The woman is telling the girl to be quiet and that it's not her job to judge people. The dame puts all the papers down and says, "It looks like you're right, Lord Uzumaki." Everyone in the room now looks at Hiruzen and Hiashi. Hiruzen is looking down in shame, and Hiashi, who had tried to stand up and leave, is now surrounded by samurai as he tries to look Naruto in the eyes and set him on fire. When Hiruzen stands up, he says, "My only reason for letting him stay is that we were almost out of council members and in a war at the time, so I didn't see any harm in letting him stay." 3 of the 10 clans were about to be lost. Those clans were Senju, Uzumaki, and Namikaze, and this clan was very strong. During my 2 terms as Hokage, I made a lot of mistakes, and I no longer feel like I can be the Hokage. That's why I started looking for my new successor. A bandaged man sitting behind Hiruzen asks Naruto, "Who are you thinking about, Hiruzen?" Naruto knows this man from the video he watched in the Land of Waves. Hiruzen says, "I'm still looking. I'm going to talk to a few candidates, but don't worry, old friend. I'm not going to ask you to wear the hat because we're the same age and I think we're both about to retire." Inside his head, he's laughing at the way his friend's face looks like it's full of stress. While thinking to himself, "You old war hawk will never get this hat as long as I live." The dame looks at Hiashi and says, "Since you don't have a place on this council anymore, you should leave." The samurai move out of the way for him, but before he can even get to the door, Naruto's voice says, "Please hold off on your order, if you don't mind. He has done some other wrong things that you should know about." One of the samurai stepped in front of the door right away to block the way. Hiashi turns around and says, "What do you mean? I haven't done anything wrong." 2 of the samurai forced him to sit back down, making him lose all of the Hyuga clan's natural calm. Again, Dame looks at Naruto and says, "How bad are these crimes, Lord Uzumaki? Surely they can wait until another time, whatever they are." Naruto shakes his head and says, "One of them helped someone try to kill his own daughter." The rest of the clan heads looked at him with wide eyes, except for Shibi Aburame. His high color and sunglasses made it hard to see, but the buzzing sound he made told everyone he was upset. Everyone on the civilian council was as pale as a sheet. Hiruzen and the 3 elders were all thinking the same thing at that moment. They were all thinking about the lessons they had learned from their sensei's wife when they were young, and they could all hear her voice in the back of their minds. Voice echo. "I want you to listen to me and remember this about my family. Never go to war with the Uzumaki clan in politics. This is one of the most important things you should know. You will lose to us because the 2 things are the same. And we Uzumaki make sure that our enemies always regret going against us." Present moment. Hiruzen he sees what Naruto is doing right away and thinks to himself, "I get it now, Mito-chan. He didn't do anything about it when it happened, but waited until now to bring it up. He didn't trust me to do my job because I didn't help Hanabi when she came in and asked for help. This way, he would have the support of the fire dame." When the dame heard this, he and his wife looked at him with narrowed eyes and said, "Show me the proof." Everyone in the Land of Fire knew that they would not stand for child abuse. Nodding his head, Naruto says, "When you went to the Leaf Village, did you bring your own doctor with you? I know you always bring one with you. Some of the proof I have are medical reports, which you probably won't be able to understand. And I don't mean to insult you with that. I know some medical information can be hard to understand."
The woman sitting to the right of the dame laughs at this.
And say, "I think that's a good idea because my brother isn't very brave when it comes to medical issues.
Even when we were kids, he would run away whenever the doctor walked into the room.
This would make her brother pout. When a little girl sitting on her lap started making chicken noises and saying, "Uncle the chicken," everyone in the room laughed. One of the samurai left the room with a hand signal and came back a few minutes later with a man. The man looked up at the fire dame and said, "You asked for my presence, your lordship?" Yes, it looks like we do need your knowledge of medicine. I would like you to meet Lord Naruto Uzumaki. When the doctor looks at Naruto, he or she says, "My name is Hyoko. What can I do to help?" Naruto says, "My name Naruto Uzumaki." Hyoko raises an eyebrow and asks, "Are you the same Naruto Uzumaki from whom Asuma got the information that saved the daimyo's niece Naho from the snakebite last month?" Naruto nods and says, "Yes, how is she doing, and were there any negative effects?" "I can tell you everything you need to know about the Whirlpool Viper if you need it. It comes from the land of Whirlpool, so my family knows a lot about it." Hyoko shakes her head and says, she didn't have any side effects, and she got better. "I won't say no to that information, though. If this comes up again, I'd like to add it to the information at the fire capital." Naruto tells him, "I'll send it to you as soon as I can." Naruto walks back to the table, takes a folder out of his bag, and says, "I'm holding a medical report for Hinata Uzumaki, who was called Hinata Hyuga at the time. She and her doctor both said that I could show this. This report was made just before she got out of the hospital after her fight with her cousin in the first round." He then gives the report to Hyoko, who starts to read it. "What are these blacked out parts?" he asks. Naruto coughs into his hand and says, "I asked her doctor to black out those parts because they were about her weight, chest size, and whether or not she was a virgin, as well as a few other things about women. I didn't think I needed to know that, and I didn't think anyone else did, either, if they got a hold of that report." Everyone in the room who has a daughter nods their heads to show that they understand. Hyoko looks up after reading the report for a few minutes and says, "I agree with her doctor's note that she stayed in here for a month and didn't do any hard work and got a lot of bed rest." Naruto says, "You can find the release form there if you look." "Who gave her permission to leave the hospital?" Hyoko looks back into the folder and turns a few pages. "It looks like her father signed her out," she says. "And he would have known what she was supposed to do, right?" says Naruto. Hyoko nods his head and says, "That's right, his signature is right here on the form that says she needs to rest." Naruto walks back to the table and picks up 2 pieces of paper. These are 2 signed letters from his former daughters. They both say that he took her from the hospital and dragged her to the compound and into one of the training dojos, where he forced her to fight one of the clan elders until she was a bloody mess on the ground. When he saw she wasn't getting up, he told one of the servants to put her in her bed without any medical care being given. He then goes on by saying, the next day, Hanabi took care of her and tried to clean her up as best she could. She then went to Hiruzen for help, but he told her he couldn't do anything because it was a clan matter and he didn't have any say in it. That night, she slept under a park bench because she felt helpless and scared of her father. He then tells how he found her, what they talked about, and how he got her breakfast while he listened to her story. Then, how he went back to the tower and used some of the old rules from when the village was first built to free both of them from their father. Because of his power in the village, I didn't think it was safe to take her to the hospital in Leaf Village. I was afraid he could still get to her, so I had her taken to a private doctor I know. As he picked up a new folder, he said, just to be clear, this was taken 2 days after it was released. He then opened it and began to read what was inside. Patient Hinata Uzumaki's medical report. Patient was taken to the hospital with damage to the optic nerve in the right eye, a cracked skull with swelling on the brain, 5 cracked ribs, a cracked left humerus, a broken right femur, a broken left hand, and severe damage to the kidneys, lungs, and heart, as well as bruises all over the body. As he kept going through the report, he wrote down everything that had been found. The 2 samurai standing on either side of Hiashi immediately put their hands on the swords at their sides. But don't draw them, even though you can tell from how they look that they want you to. Nobody in the Leaf Village knew that both of these samurai had daughters the same age as Hinata and that they had a mental image of their daughters lying on the floor. When Tsume heard this, she stood up and tried to jump over the table in full attack mode. She was now being held by Shiza in a bear hug, but the big man was struggling to keep her there. Shikaku put Kuromaru, who had shot from under the table, in a shadow possession jutsu. Everyone in the room could see that he was struggling with it. Hiyoko takes the folder and tells Sarah, who was sitting in her seat as the representative of the Leaf Village Hospital, to come look at the new medical report and give her opinion on it. The two doctors quickly look through it and find an envelope with a bellflower-shaped wax seal on the back. Sarah looks at it and asks, "Who is this Naruto-kun, and what is the wax seal for?" Everyone in the room watches as his face turns red and he says, "They are pictures of her injuries from the attack. The wax seal was to make sure no one could look at them because I was told she had to take off her clothes for them to be taken." Sarah says with a small smile, "So, Naruto-kun, have you seen the pictures?" Naruto gave her a dirty look and said, "Of course not. I'm not her doctor, so I have no right to look at pictures of her like that, and I won't do something like that to break her trust." Both doctors smile at his red face and start to look at the photos and new information. As they look at them, they get more and more angry. At the daime level, the sister of the daime smiles and says, "He is the little charmer for sure. Besides, he's kind of cute. Fishing for a new husband already, little sister?" Her brother asks. She looks at him and tells him, "No, but he's only 4 years older than Naho. He's 12. Father was 15 years older than mother when they got married, if you remember." Her brother started to rub his chin and said, "You're right, and a marriage between our two families would help strengthen the old ties between the land of fire and the land of whirlpools." His wife says, "If he's not interested, I know he adopted all of those kids from the orphanage, and if I remember right, his family doesn't care if you were born into the family or adopted. Once you're an Uzumaki, you're an Uzumaki, whether you were born into the family or adopted." Maybe he would be willing to talk about one of them getting married to Naho. Main level. Hiruzen had a look on his face that not many people had seen outside of battle. It was the look that made him the god of shinobi. As he looks at Hiashi, he says, "You better hope that's not true, or I'll charge you with treason for trying to kill a Leaf Village kunoichi." Hiyoko shuts the folder while closing his eyes. Taking a deep breath, he looks at the daime and says, "Your lordship, in my 50 years as a doctor, I've never seen anything as scary as that. And if I'm being honest, it's taking everything I have right now not to break my Hippocratic oath and hurt him." Sarah walks up to Hiashi and back slaps him across the face before anyone can stop her. And says, "His oath may prevent him from causing pain, but I was a kunoichi before I became a doctor." The daime looks at Hiashi and asks, "Do you want to say something?" Hiashi crosses his arms and says, "It's none of my clan's business how I raise my daughters. If she wasn't so weak and didn't hang out with these less important people, she might have been a good heir to the clan." The daime's face turns into stone, and he says, "Inoichi Yamanaka, please use your clan's power to confirm what we've learned here today." Hiashi is making hand signs, so Inoichi walks up to him, puts his hand on the back of his head, and says, "Mind walking, psycho-mind transmission, jutsu." After a few seconds, he steps back with a disgusted look on his face. He can see Hinata lying on the ground covered in blood, but that image is quickly replaced by a bloody Ino. Inoichi says, "It's true," as a single tear rolls down his cheek. Inoichi, who had gotten himself under control, says, "I saw the whole fight. Not only was her father there, but so was the whole Hyuga Council and all of the main branch family's elders. And they did nothing to stop it, even when Hanabi cried and asked them to stop." When the shy, quiet girl first met the daime at a social event, he felt like a dagger had been stuck in his heart. In a voice that demanded respect, he said, "After hearing and seeing all of this evidence, I am sentencing you and everyone else in that room to life in prison, except for Hanabi, who is trying to get her sister help. As payment, I am also ordering that all of their and your personal bank accounts and businesses be given to Hinata." Hiashi stood up and said, "You can't do that. If you do, the Hyuga clan will be destroyed by getting rid of the elders and council of the main branch." The daime looks down his nose and says, "Don't tell me what I can and can't do. Take him away." Hiashi hit the two samurai on either side of him with two palm thrusts. Then he looks at Naruto and says, "If I die, I'll take you with me because it's all your fault." He put chakra on his hands and ran forward before anyone else could move. Naruto says, Bakude number 30. Shidotsu Sansen. Beak-piercing triple beam, with a bored look on his face as he starts to make a burst of crackling yellow energy in his palm. He then starts to use the energy to draw an upside-down yellow triangle, which creates smaller triangles of solidified energy from its 3 points. The smaller triangles then fire at Hiashi, smashing into him and pinning him against a nearby wall. They hit both of his shoulders and his stomach, making a perfect triangle that stopped him from moving. Hiruzen pressed a seal on the desk, which called a group of AMBU officers, with Neko in the lead, and told them to arrest him. The AMBU team looks at Hiashi, who is still tied to the wall, and then at Naruto with Neko, who says, "Naruto-kun, please free him." When he moves his hand, the yellow triangles go away, causing him to fall on his face. The team quickly puts handcuffs on him. Hiruzen says, "Once you put him in a cell, you should go to the Hyuga compound and arrest the entire Hyuga clan council as well as all of the elders in the main branch family. And if any of them make trouble for you, you can use deadly force." Before he could be led away, Hiashi looked at Naruto and said, "You may have gotten rid of me for now, but I have powerful friends. You killed my family, so it only makes sense that I kill yours. You might be strong, but what about all the kids you've taken in? You won't always be able to protect them, especially when you're on a mission and they're sleeping in their beds." Naruto just walks back to his chair, sits down, and looks at him before saying, "You may have powerful friends, but I'll tell you this. I feel sorry for any poor person who comes to my compound to cause trouble." As soon as he left the room, everyone in it looked at him as if no one was looking at him. Naruto takes a drink of water and says, "And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why you should never cross an Uzumaki." Hiruzen gave a tired sigh and wished he could just put his hat away. Suddenly, Naruto recognized the man doing it as Danzo. He taps his walking cane on the floor to get everyone's attention and says, "I'm interested in how you learned these new skills. Since none of my reports show this, and since you are a leader in this village, I want to know how you found them." Naruto takes another sip from his glass and says, "I'm sorry, but you don't have the clearance level for that information." Danzo closes his one good eye and says, "I am an elder in this village, and I have the highest clearance in both the village and the land of fire." With Naruto saying, "I'm sorry, but your clearance won't work in this case because it's a secret from the land of Whirlpool." Hiruzen tells Danzo, "That's enough. Lord Uzumaki has the same right as any other clan to keep its secrets safe." Before anything else can be said, an AMBU wearing a falcon mask walks into the room and says, "I'm sorry to interrupt your meeting, Lord Hokage, but I think you should know that a bunch of kids have started a joke war, and the village is in the middle of it." As soon as everyone in the room looked at Naruto, he said, "Sure, blame the Uzumaki in the room." "That's profiling," he says with his arms crossed. All of the clan leaders, including Hiruzen, keep looking at him. He let out a breath, gave in to the pressure, and said, "Okay, tell the brats that if they don't behave, you'll tell Eiko, the head cook, to cancel dessert tonight." The AMBU nodded and left the room. Everyone in the room can hear the daimy's wife and sister laughing quietly. Then his sister says, "Lesson number 1. If you want to get kids to behave, always threaten to take away their dessert." His wife answered, "Or husbands." So that both the uncle and the niece were sad. Hiruzen calls everyone's attention to himself and says, "Let's move on to the next thing on the agenda, which is a meeting between the delegates from the Sand Village." Looking at an AMBU by the door, he says, "Please let them in." Gaara, Tamari, Kankuro, and Baki all bow to Hiruzen and say, "Greetings, Lord Hokage," as they walk into the room. Hiruzen smiles like his grandfather and says, "I'm glad you were able to come today. Now let's get down to business," he said as he took some papers off the desk. The next 3.5 hours are spent talking about a new agreement between the Land of Wind and the Land of Fire. Hiruzen had to shut down Homura, Kaharu, and Danzo because they kept asking for more and more. Baki looks at the new temporary treaty and says, "We'll take this back to our council in the Sand Village." Hiruzen nods his head and says, "All right, is there anything else anyone wants to say before we leave?" Naruto raises his hand and says, "I do." He then looks at them and says, "It's nice to see you again. Has your brother's seal given you any trouble since I fixed it?" Temari looks at him and says, "No, Lord Uzumaki. In fact, this is the closest we've been to him in a long time." Naruto says, "That's good to know now. If you remember, I had something I wanted to talk to you about when we met yesterday." Seeing that they were nodding, he puts his hand in his pocket and pulls out a scroll. When he opens it, a stack of papers falls out. He then says, "I found a contract at my compound because my family always kept 2 copies. One copy was here in the Leaf Village, and the other was at home. It was between the Whirlpool Village and the Sand Village, and it was made during World War II but was never finished." Naruto looks at one of the papers and says, "There is now a big debt that needs to be paid with a lot of money." Temari looks at him and says, "I don't know how our village will ever be able to pay it. We can barely make ends meet as it is, and living in the middle of a desert doesn't give us many ways to earn money." Naruto looks at her with a confused face and says, "I don't think you got what I meant. What's happening is that the money is owed by the village of Whirlpools, not yours." He looks at one of the papers and says, "A deal was made between our 2 villages. My village agreed to buy a lot of sandstone and other materials from the desert of the Land of Wind. And they were delivered on time, but the country was attacked before the payment could be sent." He then says, "The contract makes it clear what would happen if the payment was late, which is that we would have to pay penalties and interest for however long it was late. We've been late for 39 years now." He then pulls out an abacus and starts adding up the numbers, which he writes down on a piece of paper. 3 of the sand ninjas look at him with shocked expressions. After a few minutes, he looks up and says, "If I did my math right, this is how much my village owes you now." Baki walks up to take a piece of paper that is being passed out. When he looks at it, his one good eye opens wide. Temari and Conquer were looking over his shoulder, and Conquer faints when he sees the number 433 million written on the paper. Temari, who had taken the paper from him, started talking incoherently and said, "This is more. Then we can make 10 years worth of missions all at once." Naruto looks at her and says, "You're right, that is a lot of money. I can't give it all to you right now because it would hurt your village more than help it." The 2 sand ninja were looking at him strangely, and Gaara was standing there without showing any emotion. He then says, "Your village has been on the verge of bankruptcy for a long time. This sudden influx of money would hurt your economy and drive up the prices of everything." Before he could say anything else, Hiruzen said, "He's right, this has happened before." Shikaku says, "It would probably be better if he paid it off in small amounts. That way, your village and economy can slowly adjust to the change." All of the clan leaders nod their heads in agreement. Baki nods his head and says, "You're right. Right now, it would hurt our village more than help it." Then Naruto says, "I hope this doesn't make your village not want to do business with my family in the future. Because along with the contract, I found a prototype seal that my family was making for your village. Once I finish it, I will give it to your village for free as an apology." Temari looked at the boy. She was starting to have a lot of respect for him, especially after he kept a promise that was going to save her village but could have been forgotten over time and no one would have known about it. As she stands there and looks at him, she can easily imagine what he will look like in the future, which makes her cheeks turn red. Gaara looks at him and speaks for the first time, asking, "What is this seal, and what does it do?" With his arms crossed, Naruto picks up a piece of paper and gives it to Baki with a smile before going on. He then says, "It's basically an invisible barrier that will go over your village and work like a pair of sunglasses by reducing the brightness outside and the heat of your village. This would mean that the people in your village wouldn't have to worry about getting sunburned because it would protect them from the sun's rays. At night, all of the heat that was lost during the day can be used to help heat your village. Baki and Temari are both shocked by what they just heard. Both of them knew that the hot sun during the day and the cold nights were two of the biggest problems in the village. Now, someone was offering to fix one of their biggest problems. Kankuro woke up and his sister told him what had just happened. Kankuro looked at him and said, "You just know everything, don't you? Do you think you couldn't also solve the water problems?" As he started laughing to himself at the idea. Naruto says, "I'll look into it and see what I can do, but I can't promise anything right now." Before they leave, Naruto tells them, "I'll talk to you soon about a payment plan." Getting a head nod in response. Spending another hour talking about different things, Hiruzen says, "I think we've done everything on the agenda for today, so I'm going to end this meeting." In front of the tower. As the clan heads leave the tower, they see a funny sight, at least 8 kids stuck in a tree, yelling for help because crocodiles are snapping at them and surrounding the tree. Off to the side are at least a dozen AMBU, as well as a dozen Junin, and AMBU with paint stains on their cloaks. In front is a woman wearing a crocodile mask whose cloak is covered with big red spots. Slowly walking up to the tree, Naruto looks at the AMBU and says, "I've always told you guys that your clothes need more color. I'm glad you're finally starting to agree with me." Crocodile hit him on the back of the head for making this comment. As she looks at him, she says, "We'll send you the bill for this Uzumaki's dry cleaning." The rest of them nodded their heads to show that they agreed. Naruto looks up and says, "You kids really messed up Crocodile here. She doesn't have a sense of humor. She didn't have a single funny bone in her body." Crocodile looks at him, puts her hands on her hips, and says, "I do like to laugh." All of her co-workers and all of the crocodiles on the ground look at her with looks that say, "No, you don't." As he was walking away, the kids yelled for him to help. He looks over his shoulder and says, "Don't worry about her little pets. Just scratch them under the chin to stop them from snapping at you, because they are just big babies." Crocodile is afraid of spiders and always screams like a child when she sees one. As he ran away, he heard the woman yell, "Uzumaki," as she chased after him. Temari, who had been waiting outside for them to come out so she could talk to him, is shocked to see him acting like that after being so serious in the meeting. She then looks at the closest clan leader, whose name was Tsunade. She then asked, "Is he bipolar? Because I don't know what to do. First, he was a fool in an orange jumpsuit, then he was serious, and now he's back to being a fool." Tsunade looks at her and says, "We don't know. Just like his mother, we've never been able to make him sit still long enough to be tested. Most people think that yes, they are." Everyone else in the group agrees and nods their head.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.